What is your background and what reference points are you drawing on to speak on the subject of UAPs and UFOs, etc.?
I'm a quantum physicist. I worked for the National Security Agency, for various organizations in the intelligence community like CIA and so on. And so as part of my technical work, I was also a consultant, chief science advisor to Robert Bigelow of Bigelow Aerospace. He's really quite a titan. I mean, he has 2 space stations orbiting the Earth. So anyway, those people who are in the space business and they're moving out into space, they just can't help but wondering, what are we going to run into when we get out there?
So in 2008, a guy named Jay Stratton was the head of air and space warfare at the DIA. His job was to understand everything that we currently at that time had to use in the air and in space and everything on our roadmap for 20 or 30 years in classified black projects. His job was also to know the equivalent at our adversarial nations, right? So he's the guy who knows everything about what is possible in terms of aerospace technology and anything that would be in the air or space, simply put. One day, one of his colleagues comes into his office, pulls him into a skiff, and shows him a video that Air Force security guards took over a nuclear weapons site. It was a triangle UAP hovering over a nuclear weapons site. This colleague said, please tell me this is one of ours, like one of our black projects, some advanced cutting edge technology that's ours. And he knew instinctively it was not. That set him down a rabbit hole. He's like, there's got to be some office somewhere in the intelligence community that handles UFOs. So he went all over trying to find it, him and his colleague. They couldn't find one. So then they determined they were just going to start a UAP program. That program they started was called OSAP. They hired all the team, for example, Hal. And that program started in 2008 and got a lot of pushback behind the scenes because it turned out when they looked all over the intelligence community to see if there was another UFO program and didn't think there was, turns out there was one. And there was a deeply hidden program referred to as the Legacy Program. And it had been operating in the shadows since the 40s. Outside of congressional oversight, outside of the oversight of the White House, completely,
completely hidden away. Yeah,
as hidden as a program can be. And so they started pushing back behind the scenes against everyone involved in OSAP because they didn't want anyone else looking into this. Right? Started to cause a lot of bureaucratic issues for them, red tape issues, and ultimately OSAP lost its funding in 2010, despite the fact that it was looking into very real issues like UAP over our nuclear weapon sites. It shut down in 2010.
Why do you think it shut down?
They were dealt these bureaucratic hurdles behind the scenes by people involved in the Legacy Program, people who just caused problems and prevented funding. And
exactly.
It's a lot of, it's a big bureaucracy. People can do things behind the scenes to prevent funding from coming through for programs. And so ultimately they lost their funding in 2010. And then Jay Stratton and other people involved, they were continuing to look into this because they didn't want this serious national security concern to go, uninvestigated, right?
So that's how somebody like me gets pulled in. They say, okay, these pilots are out there and they suddenly see craft coming out of the ocean and making right angle turns at 6G or whatever. And they say, oh my God, this is way beyond our physics. So I and other physicists sort of dug into, what could be responsible for this. And we actually found that just like we use so-called Maxwell's equations and electromagnetic stuff for everything we do in electromagnetics, we have Einstein's equations in general relativity for black holes and all that kind of stuff. But it turns out if you could engineer those, you would actually get the same effects that people were observing with these UAP crafts. So we think we've come up with, what it is about the science of it. It's just that we don't have the engineering to do it.
Do you believe in UAPs?
Absolutely believe in UAPs because I've been exposed to data about them.
A more specific question would be, do you believe in aliens?
Yeah. So a number of the people I interviewed went on the record stating that they know from their own personal experiences that there have been UAP crashes over the years that have been recovered by elements of the U.S. government, and in some cases, the crashed crafts had the bodies of non-humans in them. And numerous people I interviewed went on the record saying that. And keep in mind, everyone I interviewed only shared what they lawfully could. There was a line they couldn't cross. Everyone I interviewed is aware of classified information. They they can't talk about, but they went right up to the line and made it clear that there had been recoveries of non-human bodies. A couple of people actually testified under oath to Congress saying the same thing.
Why wouldn't they be able to talk about it publicly?
Well, when you're involved in certain programs, you sign certain agreements that prevent you from sharing specific information.
Highly classified programs. And of course, the big concern is, okay, whatever we might learn about these kind of craft and so on, our adversaries are out there, and there have been crashes in Russia, crashes in China. And so if we reveal what we're learning about the subject area and said it publicly, then it might help some potential adversary
get
a step ahead. So that's why it's all just kept really close in.
So a saying that I heard often from my interview subjects, you can't tell your friends without telling your enemies, meaning you can't tell the public what we know and don't know without also telling China and Russia what we know and don't know. And giving them that information might give them a competitive advantage. And the obvious question anyone would ask when hearing that is then, well, okay, so what's shifted? Why is that no longer the leading thought? Secrecy is best. And the answer is because the U.S. is in a really high stakes race, a technology race against these adversaries to reverse engineer technology of non-human origin. And the secrecy around it in the U.S. since the 40s has created a scenario where the scientific community and academia don't even know it's real. They don't even know it's a valid area of inquiry.
Don't even believe it's real.
Yeah, I mean, the smartest kids graduating at MIT this year, they are not thinking that this is something they can put their brain power towards.
So coming back to the question, do you believe in aliens?
I 100% believe that non-human intelligent life is here and has been here for a long time.
When you say here, do you mean Earth currently living amongst us?
I don't know about the living amongst us
Don't know
part.
about that.
I don't know about that.
But wouldn't rule it out. But
there is UAP activity being reported on a daily basis by commercial airline pilots to the FAA, by Navy fighter pilots off the East Coast being reported, up the military chain of command, and on top of that, regular activity over our nuclear weapons sites inside the United States. It's happening on a regular basis on the nuclear sites and on a daily basis in commercial air travel space.
UAP have come over nuclear missile sites and actually turned off the missiles. And so, once something like that happens, you just got to take it seriously.
And the technology that they're displaying is technology that no humans have. And again, there has been some crashes, and in those crashes, there have been the bodies of non-humans.
How do we know that? How do we know that in those crashes, they've recovered bodies of non-humans?
The whistleblowers basically coming forward from the program.
So the basis of that evidence is that some people have said it.
At this point, until previously classified information regarding crashes and recoveries is declassified, until that happens, the best we could hope for is credible people putting their reputation on the line to tell you this is what's been happening.
Did someone during your process of making the documentary who had seen non-alien, non-human life, non-human intelligence, tell you that?
Yeah.
Who was that?
A number of people, but notably, Jay Stratton, who we just talked about.
Yes, right.
Who co-founded OSAP, and then became the director of the UAP task force, the largest whole of government investigation of UAP ever.
What did he say?
He went on the record in the film saying that he's seen non-human beings and non-human craft with his own eyes. That was the farthest he could go at that point.
Why did he say he couldn't go further?
He had a situation that he was involved in that for a few reasons he just wasn't comfortable talking about it yet. Some of it I think he just wanted to make sure he legally could. Now, going back to credibility, like take a guy like Jay saying that, when Jay retired a few years back, he was part of the senior executive services of the federal government. That's a level less than 1% of all federal employees ever reach. It's the equivalent of a 2-star admiral or general. Very, very senior, very trusted, cleared at a very high level. He had worked with naval intelligence in a senior capacity. He had worked with the CIA. He had worked with the Defense Intelligence Agency as the head of air and space warfare. He's a super serious, credible guy.
Yeah.
And he's putting his reputation on the line to share this information to the extent that he legally could and comfortably could.
And when you asked him why the world doesn't know this stuff? In his view, what would he say?
There's a lot of reasons. I mean, certainly the idea that we can't tell our friends without telling our enemies has been a driver. To recap the reasons for secrecy, I actually believe it's better to kind of start from the beginning. When in 1947 there was a crash at Roswell of non-human origin, and RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region.
Yeah, that's right.
And then this is the image of their cover-up story, trying to show a weather ballooner. Yeah, so multiple people in my film go on the record saying the Roswell crash really happened. Technology of non-human origin and non-human bodies were recovered. If you put yourself in the shoes of the military and government at that point, like put yourself in Truman and Eisenhower's shoes, you're just coming out of World War II. The world was just chaos for a very long time. It's finally starting to settle down. You can't exactly step to the microphone and tell America that there's a new threat that we know nothing about and we can't protect you from. They're far advanced. What's the advantage of that? So secrecy became the plan at that point. And they had more questions than answers. So everyone I've talked to who gave me context explained that the plan for secrecy went in motion there. Let's investigate. Let's find out more about what we don't know before we tell the American people. That was quickly followed by the Cold War era. And we learned that Russia also had retrieved technology of non-human origin. And so we knew we were in a technology race. So then the idea of can't tell your friend without telling your enemy ruled the day. So now the Cold War mentality, led to more secrecy. And as a security wrapper for this program that it started, they created the stigma in the late 40s, early 50s, this cultural stigma, this idea that you're crazy if you look into this topic, you're wacky, you'll have your reputation ruined, you'll have your career ruined.
Yeah, there's actually a CIA meeting where people got together and said, okay, in order to not have people be pursuing this area, let's go out of our way to spread what we would call now disinformation about
basically the most effective disinformation campaign in the history of the U.S. government, because it got into our culture. Some movies were funded that made aliens seem silly and the idea of life from elsewhere seem ridiculous, and that got compounded over the years. And then we got to the point where we were like, just like a few years ago, where the average person just thinks it's not real. The average scientists, academia, they think it's conspiracy stuff. It's nonsense. It's silly. There was no advantage for elected leaders to get in front of this, or for military members to, speak up about what they learned or saw. It would be a career ruiner. And that started to shift several years back when Jay Stratton and Jim Lukaski, when they put together OSAP in 2010, and they started to go out there and collect data and get evidence, and they started to actually share it with the Senate Intelligence Committee and the Senate Armed Services Committee, and looking at classified data in a classified setting, people like Marco Rubio, who was the vice chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee at the time, started to realize,
there's something here.
Not only is there something here, but we've got a problem, right? There's a lot of UAP activity over these highly classified sites, like our nuclear weapons sites. There's a lot at stake. We are in this race with other nations, and the stigma has created a disadvantage for us. It's very hard to win a technology race when the majority of your scientists don't know it's a valid area of inquiry, right?
And do people think that there's one type of non-human intelligence that's visiting the Earth, or is there many, many types?
People who have been involved in recoveries have said
there are at least four separate types. Now, I have not had direct access to that, but I believe the people who I talk to.
Four different types of life.
4 different types of life, at least. Yeah.
And the people I've talked to, through the process of making the documentary, both on camera and off the record sources, and the people Hal's talked to over the decades, have said that there have been dozens of recoveries of crashed craft in the U.S. alone. Dozens of craft of non-human origin that either crashed organically or caused to crash and then recovered.
And have you spoken to people who, you talked about Jay, have you spoken to other people that have worked on these crashed crafts?
I've talked off the record with some people who are involved in recoveries. Mm-hmm. They would not go on camera to do interviews. Special forces people that would not go on camera to do interviews. One, I actually thought, I've mentioned this on another interview, but one I thought was going to do an interview, and then a couple days before sent me a message saying, after further consideration and long talks with my wife, I decided I'd be forfeiting my life if I participated in your interview. And I thought that was
like
very
chilling,
unsettling
yeah.
message to get, obviously, but also very specific word choice, forfeiting my life.
What did he know?
He was a very senior special forces guy who had told me he had been involved in multiple recoveries. That's what he told me.
Okay.
And I met him through some high-level intelligence people. Early on in my process, I got connected with the Senate Intelligence Committee and the Senate Armed Services Committee, and they had on their own learned the reality of the situation through the work of OSAP and then ATIP and then the UAP task force and through their own intelligence channels. Leaders on those committees wanted to educate the public about what they could lawfully about this, but they didn't really have a way to do it. It's such a complicated situation. It takes a while to explain it. You can't do it in like a 6-minute news hit on Fox or CNN or even like a 15-minute, 60-minute segment. You just can't do it. And no one wanted to be the one guy trying to do it. So when I started putting together the film and socializing this safe way for people to step forward, it also quickly became those people's plan for disclosure. That's why Secretary Rubio participated. That's why White House National Security Council members participated. It became, amongst the group of people who had learned the truth, it became the plan for disclosure, the way to bring this information out in a thoughtful way.
Do the presidents of the United States know about this stuff? Are they aware?
Historically, no.
Historically,
yeah.
No.
And even Rubio says on camera that, historically, this has been kept from even sitting presidents.
Who would know then?
So a number of the people in my film break down who's involved in the legacy program. To put it simply, it's elements of the CIA, elements of the Air Force, elements of the Department of Energy, and a few major defense contractors. And they have the ability to access information from a number of federal agencies and branches of the military, but the primary leaders of this program are the CIA, the Air Force, the Department of Energy, and major defense contractors. And Rubio breaks down in the film the way our bureaucracy works. You could have career bureaucrats in positions of power at those organizations for decades, and they can just wait out sitting presidents. They can wait out sitting senators.
Sitting presidents as just temporary help that are going to come and go.
And that's what's been happening up until this point now. So the fact that Rubio had learned so much about the reality of this situation and the extent of the cover-up, and then ended up arguably the second most powerful guy in the world as our Secretary of State and our National Security Advisor at the same time, which has only happened once in U.S. history, Henry Kissinger for 2 years. No one else has ever had both those jobs at the same time. The fact that he ended up in that position of power and influence after learning the reality of the situation, and right as the age of disclosure is coming out and driving this national conversation, it really led to the current president, Trump, being informed about this in a way that no president has in a very long time.
So are you saying that the United States don't think the public are ready to even know that this exists? Because, they could tell us that they have recovered UAPs or aliens, whatever it might be, without telling us about the technology.
They could, and I think we're going to get to that point.
Yeah, I think they were trapped in this system that had grown up, and people behind the scenes working in the classified programs said, well, we don't know how the public is going to respond, so let's be safe and let's just keep it in-house.
Do you think Trump believes that there are aliens? Because I was looking at some of his quotes and he said, well, I don't know if they're real or not. I don't have an opinion on it. I never talk about it. A lot of people do. A lot of people believe it.
Barack Obama said that aliens are real.
Well, he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that.
So aliens are real.
No, I don't have an opinion on it. I never talk about it. A lot of people do. A lot of people believe it. Do you believe it, Peter?
Well, if the president can declassify anything that he wants to, so if you want to make an announcement.
I may get him out of trouble by declassifying.
One of the things that came out in the age of disclosure is that during Trump's first administration, his cabinet was briefed by the UAP task force, by Jay Stratton. And when he briefed them, he was told that they had asked for this briefing because they needed to be able to evaluate what the repercussions would be if Trump decided to step to the microphone and tell the world we're not alone in the universe. Obviously, he didn't end up deciding to do that then. However, in this new administration, he's got Rubio in the position of Secretary of State and National Security Advisor and fully aware of the situation. And that has given him the comfort to put this process in motion. There's certainly a disclosure process unfolding right now.
Obama said in an interview that he did with Brian Tyler Cohen, when asked about aliens, Obama said, "They're real, but I haven't seen them. They're not being kept at Area 51. There's no underground facility unless there's this enormous conspiracy and they hid it from the president of the United States." Now that sounded to me like kind of sarcasm when he said they're real, but, and then explained that they're not real.
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in Area 51. There's no underground facility unless there's this enormous conspiracy and they hid it from the President of the United States.
So it would appear to me that Obama also doesn't know of any aliens.
I think Obama was largely kept in the dark.
Yeah.
I think he does know that the base fact that we're not alone in the universe. And I actually think when he said they're real, I think he was being, that was just candid.
That was his honest.
That was his honest,
Yeah.
candid, genuine statement. I think when he then said they're not kept at Area 51, I think he's also being honest because none of my sources say
they're
that
at Area
say that
51,
UAP
yes,
and aliens are being
exactly.
kept at Area 51. They're being kept somewhere else. So I think he was being honest there. And I think when he made the comment of unless there's a giant conspiracy, if you watch the tape, he like sips his cup and raises his eyebrows. As he said, I think he knows there's a giant conspiracy. That's the truth. The following day, Trump was asked about that on Air Force One, and he responded saying Obama revealed classified information and he shouldn't have said that. And I think that's the truth.
Yeah.
I think presidents don't know and they're told not to talk about it.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.